On March 26th, Lil Nas X released a new single ahead of his upcoming album. The track, entitled Montero, Call Me By Your Name, is autobiographical. Montero is Lil Nas X's given name, and the lyrics focus on his sexuality, his struggles with coming out at an early age, as well as a celebration of who he is, devoid of any shame. The opening lyrics, for example, are based on a real interaction he had with another young man, and the parenthetical in the title is a reference to the coming-of-age gay romance novel Call Me By Your Name. Such an explicit song all on its own would provoke the anti-LGBT religious right, but the music video has caused the most consternation. The offending scene features Lil Nas X dancing provocatively for the devil to distract him long enough to put an end to him. The outrage was predictable, as ritualistic as Sunday church. Defenders of the music video and of the young musician have already pointed out that much of the outrage, whether explicitly stated or not, comes from a place of homophobia, ironically the topic of the song itself. Those who believe he has offended their religion have misunderstood the power dynamics. Lil Nas X's video is not an attack but a defense against persecution by the church and other religious authorities. The video may have caused offense, but the video itself is self-defense. The outrage is another instance of a long history of concern about the encroaching threat of the devil, a moral panic that ebbs and flows throughout history with notable examples in the United States. Everything from the Satanic Panic and Halloween scares of the 1980s, to more recent conspiracy theories about Hollywood actors harvesting adrenochrome to perform devil-worshipping rituals. Obviously, this is all ridiculous, and even a modest amount of research has shown that. However, what those who debunk this nonsense and those who defend Lil Nas X often fail to do is acknowledge that the central figure related to this panic, a fallen angel who sits on the throne of hell, is simply not real. This is not a statement of skepticism of the supernatural. Rather, it is a statement rooted in Christianity. The devil, as depicted in the music video and in popular culture, does not exist in the Holy Bible. The idea that an adversary collects the souls of mankind and reigns over the damned is a fairly recent invention, and contradicts what is actually written in Scripture. The devil is a kind of Christian fan fiction that bears little resemblance to how the character was depicted in the New Testament, and no resemblance whatsoever to how the character was originally depicted in the Tanakh. The Tanakh, or Hebrew Bible, is the canonical collections of Hebrew scriptures, including the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Christians know the Tanakh as the Old Testament of their Holy Bible. The division of these books contained within are not necessarily in the precise chronological order in which scholars believed them to be written. Nevertheless, contextual and historical clues suggest there is a strong possibility that the first written record of what would eventually be considered the devil is found in the Book of Job, and the second written record is found in the Book of Zechariah. In the Book of Job, however, the devil is not the devil. Although mistranslated and misrepresented in the Christian Bible, the Hebrew Bible does not name him Satan, but rather Ha-Satan. Ha translates to the definite article the, and Satan closely translates to accuser or adversary, or, within the specific context of the Book of Job, prosecutor. Satan is not a proper name, but a title or descriptor. In the Book of Job, God meets with his heavenly court. Who they are varies depending on the book. In Psalm 82 they are called divine beings and gods. In 1 Kings they are the heavenly host, but suffice it to say they are beings who assist God in one way or another. Among them, introduced in the Book of Job, is Ha-Satan, the aforementioned accuser, adversary, or prosecutor. In Job, God asks the prosecutor where he has been, and the prosecutor responds that he has been traveling the world. God wonders if the prosecutor has met Job, a man of great virtue as well as obedience and fear of God. The prosecutor suggests that Job is only so obedient and good because he has everything he needs, prompting an arrangement between them in which Job would lose everything as a test. We will come back to this, but next, the Book of Zechariah. The first 6 chapters of the Book of Zechariah are a series of visions, all of which are regarded as the combined symbolic history of Israel and vision of a better future. The accuser appears only briefly to be rebuked by God. In Hebrew, he is merely the accuser, the prosecutor, and one of God's divine beings. In the Hebrew Bible, the only time the proper name Satan is used is in 1 Chronicles. However, to the author and to the Jewish people, this was not meant to be that Satan. According to the Jewish Study Bible on the section, Many scholars understand the Hebrew Satan to refer to the infamous heavenly being, but it is more likely that it here refers to a human adversary. Though some things are clear, such as the basics of translations, the motivations of the anonymous authors of the Hebrew Bible are challenging to determine, in even less confusing circumstances. Nevertheless, every reference to the devil in the Old Testament practically has an asterisk next to it. When Christians retranslated the Hebrew Bible as their Old Testament, the Hebrew word Satan was often capitalized and made Satan, even if it wasn't the Satan, God's servant, any Satan meaning any accuser, any enemy. For example, Psalms 107 verses 6 and 7 in the Hebrew Bible is, "Appoint a wicked man over him, may an accuser stand at his right side. May he be tried and convicted, may he be judged and found guilty." But in the Christian Bible it reads, "And let Satan stand at his right side." This psalm has nothing to do with the devil, or probably not even the Satan. For lack of a better word, Christians retconned the Hebrew Bible to have references to the devil, thereby better conforming to Christianity. The serpent in Genesis was retroactively cast as Satan by church leaders in the 2nd century. Dogma was fashioned to retroactively describe Old Testament figures as being influenced by Satan, all in the service of giving the devil the appearance of always existing. Returning to the Book of Job, it's important to understand that biblical texts were written by different authors across different centuries and with different purposes. Many books were written as the history of the Jewish people, some were written as instruction, and some were written to answer questions, often through etiological myths. An etiological myth provides supernatural answers to why things are the way they are in the absence of more grounded evidence. This is not confined to the Abrahamic faiths, of course. For example, the Greek myth of Persephone and Hades is etiological. It is meant to explain the seasons. Scholars debate what is and is not meant to be taken literally in the Bible, but in both Judaism and Christianity, it is not necessarily considered blasphemy to assume that certain stories are etiological, not literal. The creation of the universe in Genesis is one such story that is not always taken literally, even by the faithful. The Book of Job is another such story that is not always considered to be historical. Instead, the Book of Job attempts to give an answer to a complicated question. If God is good, why do bad things happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? An answer to these questions is often called a theodicy, and the Book of Job is one of the earliest and most famous examples. If the Book of Job is, in fact, etiological and a theodicy, not some historical account of Job, then it stands to reason that the prosecutor character was merely invented to set up the story, and that any further inclusion of Satan in the Christian New Testament is only an extension of a character that was never meant to be taken literally. Satan most famously appears as a character in the New Testament in the temptation of Jesus Christ in the desert. 3 out of the 4 Gospels describe this temptation: Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The Gospel of Mark only references the event in passing, whereas the Gospels of Matthew and Luke describe it in some detail. Satan tempts Jesus to transform stones into bread, to throw himself to the ground and rely on divine power to rescue him, and finally, Jesus is tempted with the power to rule over kingdoms of the world. Jesus does not accept this offer, but also does not contradict Satan's ability to do this or his ownership of these kingdoms. But God has not granted the devil dominion over the world, which suggests that the offer was from God himself, and that God's prosecutor merely carried this out. Jesus' temptation in the desert was a test by his Father, not by the devil. Another interpretation of the temptation in the desert is that it was meant as a lesson, and not to be taken literally. The temptation has 3 offers, sort of the magic number in storytelling, each escalating from the former, and each a lesson for the early Christians. God's prosecutor exists as an antagonist in the story, as a metaphor for temptation. Another reason to believe the temptation in the desert was not meant to be some historical account is nobody else was there to bear witness. And while accounts in the Gospels, such as the crucifixion, may have been accounts of a historical Jesus, the temptation in the desert is not reliable as history. It is instead an important lesson. Satan is referenced by name a handful of other times in the New Testament, but most Christians focus on his alleged role in the Book of Revelation. Few biblical books are more misunderstood than Revelation. In modern times, many Christians use Revelation as a warning against the coming power of the devil and the end of the world, but the actual content of Revelation tells a different story. The author of Revelation, John of Patmos, had a specific audience in mind: 7 early Christian churches in what is now Turkey. John describes the challenges facing these churches in the 1st century CE. Roman officials were concerned about the growing sect of Christianity, not for religious reasons, but for political reasons. Jesus Christ as a Messiah had revolutionary overtones. John's letter to the 7 churches was full of instructions on how to behave under this threat, and how to remain faithful instead of assimilating into another culture. The beast referenced in the Book of Revelation is not literally the devil. It is almost certainly a reference to the Roman Empire, and more specifically, its emperor. Revelation is political. It is not a warning about the devil. John was concerned with immediate and terrestrial matters, not a supernatural evil. The prophecy of Revelation is merely the hope of a better future for the early Christians. In short, there is actually very little Satan in the Bible. Certainly not enough to cast him as the enemy of God or the enemy of humanity. So, how did we get here? How did God's servant and prosecutor become a monster who reigns in hell? Red, horned, terrifying, and apparently easily distracted by Lil Nas X. The devil as commonly depicted today is the product of artists and reinterpretation of centuries-old events to better fit the emerging religion of Christianity. In the 3rd century, Origen of Alexandria began to popularize the idea that Satan was a fallen angel. This comes from a mistranslation or misunderstanding of a verse from the Gospel of Luke. While Jesus was speaking to either 70 or 72 followers of his, he said, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." However, this misinterprets Jesus' words and rearranges the text. As theologian Albert Barnes once said, lightning is an image of rapidity or quickness. I saw Satan fall quickly or rapidly, as quick as lightning. The phrase "from heaven" is to be referred to the lightning and does not mean he saw Satan fall from heaven. Christians retroactively cast Satan as being present in books like Ezekiel and Isaiah. For example, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, Isaiah has a prophetic vision about the fall of the king of Babylon. Translated from Hebrew, Isaiah speaks of a morning star, but translated and retranslated a few different ways, the Latin word for this morning star is Lucifer. Those who wished to advance the theory that Satan was a fallen angel came to the erroneous conclusion that Lucifer simply must be another inexplicable proper name for Satan, capitalized it, and retconned a vision of the king of Babylon to be an allegory about the devil. The idea stuck in the minds of early Christians, and by the Middle Ages, the Satan character was largely understood to be the enemy of God, the mastermind of sin and temptation. Satan became a common scapegoat for the ills of the world. Why is the world the way it is? They asked. It couldn't be those in power, it couldn't be those with wealth, it couldn't be the church, and it couldn't be the natural world that they barely understood. So it had to be something else. Someone else, and that someone, conveniently, was an invisible entity that was discovered centuries after the fact in the Old Testament. Satanic panic is nothing new. By the Middle Ages, the depiction of Satan had reached the image we have of him today. Red, horned, sometimes with goat hooves. This was the invention of artists, drawing upon earlier mythological characters. The Church rejected worship of pagan deities, which may explain why Satan was cast as this blasphemous image. To sum up, outrage about the Montero music video and all satanic panics are derived from mistranslations of the Bible, purposeful obfuscation, historical scapegoating, and anti-pagan propaganda. Lil Nas X is not dancing with a depiction of a figure with firm roots connected to the Abrahamic God. He is dancing with a character stolen and reinvented from Judaism that bears no resemblance to this. Belief in the devil has more to do with blasphemy, The idea that God does not have control over good and evil, or that God could be threatened, is far more blasphemous than a music video and a shoe. Also, it kind of slaps.